now the fight comes in. Michigan taken down. CLG have found the enemy mid laner. The Hex-Tech ultimatum is going to keep Lyra in place. The Bloblets are summoned. They're likely going to be burned before they can do anything about it. Lyra gets back into his full form, only to be taken down again. Afro move finding the kill, jumping away. Trying to stay alive. Darshan's going to the kill. Ladies and gentlemen, from the ashes of near defeat, CLG will rise again.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to NALCS tonight. After a dandy of weekend games, we're here to go ahead and run through what went down. Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Degon Gonzalez, and joining me is Irene and Kobe. Gentlemen, how do you guys feel after running through that marathon?
How do you feel, honestly? Because Captain Flowers was completely out of breath. Yeah. His voice was gone.
Yeah. Did you see the Twitch chat meme? They're saying, water the flower. And they're like, they're losing his voice. They're like, water the flowers. I'm fine, though. Yeah, that was a heck of a series. Let's go ahead and take a look at the bracket after everything shook down. There it is on your screen. Team Dignitas and Counter Logic Gaming moving on. And now that we've got this game completed, we now know that TSM and Team Dignitas will be playing off in one semifinals match with Immortals and Counter Logic Gaming in the other side of the bracket.
Honestly, I'm super hyped for the bottom lane matchup of the first semifinal there, TSM and Team Dignitas. Both of those bottom lanes have said that they are the best bottom lane in the entire North American LCS, and Adrian specifically was, calling out that he wanted this matchup. So we'll get to see, who gets to decide when it matters in playoffs territory.
And they're both fantastic team fight AD carries. That's the thing that stands out to me. I did my all-pro vote basically based off of how well you team fight is what it came down to. And Alltech was my number 3, with Doublelift being my number 1, because these guys have that clutch factor. They know what range to play at to optimize damage, whether or not the enemy moves towards them or they have to retreat. So I really love the positioning and watching these guys. It's just so hypnotic to watch them in team fight.
We've also heard a lot about how both of these are AD carry shot callers, which are super rare in the scene. So definitely a lot on the line, basically.
I think the last time I heard that, it was like Zuna, like way back in the day, right?
Back the Vulcan XDG days. But a bot lane that had a little bit of struggling this weekend was CLG's bot lane. Let's start there with CLG versus Envy. And, CLG thought was going to be a walk in the park. Instead, had a slugfest here, 3-2 over Envy.
Oh, this was one where Envy pretty much won every single early game, and game 4 looked like it was going to be Envy's as well. And CLG, they pretty much, like Darshan hit the nail on the head. They were fighting fights that they shouldn't have fought that early on in the game based on composition. This is one of those fights as well. Even though they're up 1,000 gold, their team comp is not built for team fighting that early on against Envy's.
Yeah, and in some of the areas that they were choosing, the early skirmishes were super risky, right? We heard a little bit in the interview with Apollo, and he talked about, the CLG bottom lane, they were choosing weaker lane matchups and more for late game and team fighting, with Alistar and stuff, but they were still also choosing engagements earlier in the the game when they were at a disadvantage.
And that seems to be one of the themes of the playoffs so far. Early lane engage type champions and engage type team comps against late scaling team comps. And we saw it in the promotion tournament. We're seeing it here with CLG over Envy. Late scalers seem to be what's in meta right now that's finding success.
For the bottom lane especially, I think, the Tristana, the Twitch, we're seeing a bit of the Callista pop up, and that's kind of the engage support, AD carry. But then also the Sivir, which does engage and has that hyper carry potential with the 500 CS Sivir win condition.
Right.
So I think actually the bottom lane is becoming a little bit more what the meta is about, with Ardent Sensor on the rise, with engage mostly being drafted on that part, but also you can flexibly draft like a Janna and have things like a Maokai in your composition as well.
Also, one of the big things here for CLG coming up with their match with Immortals is going to center around this mid game, where Immortals during the regular season, they showed that they were one of the quickest and most decisive mid-game teams. A lot of it revolving around Smithy in the jungle. This ex-CLG member, it just continues to add to the hype of this matchup.
That's what's going to be super sick to watch, is it's Smithy versus his old team that he got the better of both times that they played against Counter Logic Gaming, but also with the condition that Stixxay and Aphromoo looked like in that previous series against Envy, Cody Sun and Olay, these guys are so dominant. Olay, #1 all-pro support by a mile, the most points out of anybody who was even voted for, and that is something you have to watch out for, is that type of playmaking support in that matchup, because today, up against Apollo and Hakuho, who don't have that kind of history, we're seeing Cody Sun and Olay also step up to the table.
Right, let's not forget about the man in the mid lane that also played for CLG, Poe Belter. He's going to have to go up against who seemed to find his form late in this series, but played throughout and kept CLG in it.
Yeah, basically the replacement as who he was able to stay on the team, and Pobelter moved on to bigger and better things, honestly, until the playoffs for their team. So Pobelter's one of the ones who experienced the kind of downfall there of Immortals in the playoffs after they had a very successful regular season, and that's going to be his prime directive, is like not letting that happen to his team again, especially against Counterlogic Gaming.
Yeah, 2 third-place finishes when they were in prime position. 2 times they had the first round bye, 2 times they ended up third, then they missed playoff during the reconstruction in spring of the Immortals roster, and now they find themselves with another first round bye up against CLG.
A lot of history in this matchup.
It's going to be so juicy.
Yep, and from the regular season, 0-2 is Counterlogic Gaming against Immortals, so they're going to have to break that one. Like Dignitas did against Cloud9.
Yep.
Cloud9 had 2 games over Dig, weren't able to find the victory. Dignitas with the upset.
Yeah, this was one that, coming into it, I was actually going really far back and forth between Dignitas winning this and C9 winning this in predictions, but ultimately I edged it a little bit towards C9 because I didn't feel like Keen had the same effect as somebody like Jensen, but then this bottom lane, the ones that we had been talking about so much, were able to step up, and Shrimp was kind of the big X factor in that matchup for me, was his disruption in the early parts of the game. He got shut down, blue flashes level 1 multiple times, got really bad starts, but still found ways to be very effective early.
Yeah. Outplayed Contracts a little bit there.
Yeah, especially that Jarvan game where his flash is blown on the invade.
Yeah.
He sneaks into the brush, holds still when the Rek'Sai is passing by, and pulls off, a huge upset on the top side.
Before we move on to the matchup with TSM, I want to talk about Cloud9 just a bit here, because this is a team that we have such high expectations. They're a team, one of the 3 teams that has a banner up there on the wall, and so they are held to a higher standard. What can they do to regroup as they move towards the gauntlet?
A lot of it is probably going to center around Smoothie, I feel like. He was pretty adamant on social media afterwards about it being unacceptable, basically, the play that they showed versus Team Dignitas, and he is one of the prime shot callers for the team, so I really feel like they're going to have to regroup around him.
Yeah, and we're also seeing, I think the same thing kind of happened with Stixxay today, was Sneaky also kind of suffered from, kind of being outmatched in a lane matchup with the Tristana, where people are now understanding how to play against it, where you don't just sacrifice the lane, let her just keep pushing you into turret and slowly chunk it out, because that allows her to scale. We're seeing people pick things that can be aggressive into it, and Sneaky did kind of fall prey to that with some of his Tristana games. Did eventually, in some of the final moments there, be able to, have a reset in that triple kill that we saw at the Baron, but it still wasn't enough. I felt like Sneaky was pretty off, and it was kind of reminiscent of his Rift Rivals performance for me as well.
Yeah, right after the big play around Baron, then at the Nexus turrets, doesn't flash the crucial CC.
Sneaky giveth, and Sneaky taketh away. They're going to head on over to the gauntlet, but Dignitas moves on against TSM, who hasn't been sitting idly. There's a reason why they have the bye. They're the #1 team in North America. Definitely
super excited to see what both TSM and Immortals have, because, as you said, they've been sitting practicing, and we think, cooking up new stuff for a 7-16, and typically TSM, everyone sees them as one of the slowest teams to adapt to new patches, and when they do falter, they almost always chalk it up to changes in the patches. So maybe with this extra time, they'll get off the ground a little bit quicker, but people are still expecting TSM to show up as the powerhouse here in North America.
It's a little bit strange, though, because they're actually 0-2 against Dignitas, and Dignitas beat them when they had Laud on the team as well. So now with Altec in the bottom lane and Adrian, and both of them acclimated completely, we're seeing a completely different Dignitas in playoffs. And I had made the mistake of kind of judging the C9 and what was going to come in terms of precedence from Dignitas' side. And I feel like this is still a matchup where Dignitas is very close to being, I would honestly say, favored, considering that they beat TSM the last time they played them, and the streak that they've been on has been crazy.
Right, and speaking of Adrian, we do have a little bit from his interview here after the postgame. Take a listen.
We've beaten almost every other team, so I think people are really scared to face us in playoffs right now, because we beat the only team that beat us during the regular split, so everyone should be watching out for us. I really want to go against TSM because I want to knock TSM out of the finals.
All right, strong words there from Adrian, and I love it because they are 2-0 against TSM, a 2-0 win and a 2-1 win earlier in the regular season, and his addition to the bot lane has been huge.
I think it's cool because a lot of times people are like, we'd rather have the easier matchup, you know. But if you want to win playoffs and go to Worlds, you got to beat the best teams. You can't just try to avoid them forever. You got to beat everybody eventually. And Adrian's just like, yeah, I want to play TSM. I want to knock them out instead of maybe I hope that Envy wins.
Coming into the playoffs this year, we promise some of the most competitive playoffs that we have ever had in North American LCS. And so far, 2 best-of-5s, they're definitely delivering. I don't expect it to slow down as we move on to semifinals.
I think one of the cool storylines to look forward to for Team Dignitas is that if they want to win, there's a possibility that they have to beat the 3 gods of the NALCS. They knocked out Cloud9. They might have. They're going to have to beat
many-faced god of the North American LCS.
Taking down CLG.
They got to take down the old gods.
Yeah, that's something that they're going to have to do. That kicks off next Saturday following the conclusion of the EU LCS semifinals. Hopefully that one doesn't go all 5. If it does, that's a great series as well. But any last remarks, any last questions here for you guys?
Let's go. I'm ready for semifinals, honestly.
All right, that's going to do it here for us tonight. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and we'll catch you next week for the semifinals. Have a great night.